r/askreddit. What's your best I didn't just dodge a bullet, but a tactical nuke story? When I was 14, I went to my best friend's house for her birthday party. A 30-year-old guy that worked for their parents asked her to tell me that he wanted to take me out on a date. I said I had a boyfriend. He seemed nice, but he started following us everywhere and just standing back staring at us. They had a huge farm. I got nervous and called Mom to come get me. Months later, we saw his wanted poster at our grocery store. He was serial killer Angel Resendez, the railway killer. Mom didn't believe me until it was on AMW that night and they interviewed my friend's foster parents. Then she freaked. I was once the last person to cross a bridge before it fell, looked in my rear view to see what the noise was to see open air where there should have been road, and some white-faced people who were just about to cross as well. My mom's BFF had a son get out of prison. He was doing tattoos for a living. We lived in a state that still had tattoos illegal at the time, so he and his mom came to our house to give us a tattoo. I was like 18 at the time and I think he was in his early 20s. We were told he went to prison because, while he did have a drug problem at the time, he took the fall for someone carrying a fuck ton of meth. His mom kept hinting, and eventually outright suggesting, I let him take me on a date. She swore up and down he needed a good influence like me. I'll admit, I did feel pressured quite a bit. His mom was one of my favorite people in the world and I felt like I was letting her down. But I was not feeling it. Dude was not attractive at all. Worst of all, he was covered in swastikas, that he claimed was to survive prison. I also found it really creepy that he kept oddly stroking my foot while doing a tattoo several inches above my ankle. But, we managed to end the tattoo party with no dates made. Cool. About 3 months later, I'm listening to the news as background noise and I hear her son's name mentioned. Police are looking for him. He strangled his girlfriend and all 4 of her children, after the girlfriend caught him molesting one of the kids. I've posted this story before, but when I was a young child, I was outside playing with the hose by myself. A man appeared at my fence and asked me to come over. I walked over, he leaned down and picked me up. I started kicking at him and he dropped me almost immediately, then walked away. After that I ran inside, hid in my closet and never told a single person. I had almost forgotten about it, or thought I had imagined it until years later when my mom was telling me about how they recently solved a cold case of a man who kidnapped and murdered a girl around my age at the time from our neighborhood and left her body in a field a few miles from our house. That's so scary. I had a very similar situation again, not quite as scary, but it spooked the hell out of me at the time. I was about 12, my brother about 7. We may have been about a year older. Dad parked right in front of the store, pointed through the glass door at the bread stand, said he needed bread and would be 12 seconds. While he was inside, my brother and I were chatting, fighting, and I was cut off by a tapping on the window. I thought maybe Dad had forgotten his keys and looked out. Next to me, a leathery-looking man wearing more leather and with tattoos on his scalp was glaring at us, arms wrapped up around himself, and he was looking around him, throwing weight from one foot to the other. The car park was empty. He motioned for me to get out of the car, or roll the window down. My dumbass brother told me I should. I told him to STFU and keep still. I shook my head at the man, saw the car was unlocked, panicked and locked it. He tried the handle and I thought I was going to die. The little bastard in the back seat is still telling me to do what the man says. Now he's babbling about knowing him. He's probably the uncle of some kid from school. I distinctly remember the phrase Billy's uncle is a robber. I'm pretty sure it's him. We should talk to him. I swear to God I could have thrown out the whole child. The dude steps away from the car, still all shifty looking, and checks the license plate. Then he jumped into a running van, with tinted windows that had been idling perpendicular to us. There was a woman in the driver's seat, glaring at us. I just remember how mad they both looked. Like they hated us. And how focused they looked. Like they were working on a math problem they didn't want to be caught doing. Anyway, after he jumped in they drove off. The next day an Amber Alert was out for attempted child abduction in the same parking lot. The police didn't take us seriously when we called, but I guess he tried again the next day and was taken seriously. Okay, if we are all sharing our stories, I want to tell mine as well. Something I've never told anyone. I was about 14 at the time and I was once working out at the gym with my dad, and there was this man who kept looking at me, one who I had never seen before. One of my dad's friends was there and they had actually warmly greeted each other, so I didn't feel too weirded out by it at first. I caught him enough times, however, to make note of his face, and the look each time was one that likely harbored ill intentions. About a week later I was walking my dogs just before nightfall and I saw a strange car. My mom always said I've had a New Yorker's sense of security, even though I'm Southern, so I take note of the vehicles that normally come down my lane, but this time it was different. The car turned down my direction, and it was at that moment that I made eye contact with the same man from the gym, who almost let out a shocked expression. I kept going with my mind racing as to what was going on. Meanwhile, he stopped the car about halfway down my lane. I kept going about my walk thinking if I should reach out to a jogger I saw, but I was too afraid, thinking I was overreacting. Nevertheless, as I returned from the walk, alarms going off and everything, the car was still there, only he had turned around facing my approaching direction and I would have to walk right past his stopped car to get home. At this point I walked into the neighbor's yard at the top of my street, and to affirm my alarmed suspicions he turned his car and shined the lights at the bushes I crept into. It was at that moment that I took off running away from my street. And he followed. I swear my neighborhood has never been so empty as it was in that moment, but I ran until I reached our boat landing, which was fenced in, and eventually raced down to the end, where I pondered jumping in the water and swimming over to our dock as an escape as his car circled around and stopped at the gate. After 5 minutes of anticipation he actually left. And I made my way shakily back home, where I had some friends apparently waiting to hang out. Meanwhile, I was literally trying to stop from shaking. I never told anybody about it, but a few days after, a mysterious car would show up very late at night and stop in front of our house, only to repeat the cycle intermittently for nearly a few months. I always stood watching for someone to get out, but they never did, and eventually they stopped showing up. I'll never know what that person's intentions were that day, but I'll always tell myself I dodged a tactical nuke. I went to Boston U and lived less than a mile from the finish line of the Boston Marathon. In 2013, my friends and I had decided that we were going to walk down to the finish line to see the end of the race, after a light 9 a.m. drink, as is tradition for college students on Marathon Monday. We got way too drunk and decided to go to McDonald's instead. Quite literally dodged a bomb. Edit. Context for those who might not know: 2013 was the year of the Boston Marathon bombing. There were a few days where all my appliances were breaking down. First the clothes washer, then the air conditioner, then the dishwasher. Then one morning, before leaving for work, the refrigerator stopped cooling. I was in a terrible mood on my commute to work, and then I had a flat tire in the middle of rush hour traffic. I pulled over to the shoulder. Normally I would have got out immediately and started changing it. I can change a tire in 5 minutes. It wouldn't have even made me late, but everything breaking in the days leading up to this flat had me defeated. I rested my head on the steering wheel a few seconds and said out loud, "Why me?" when, almost as an answer, I was hit from behind. Traffic has slowed because of my pulling over, and an ambulance driver transporting a patient between hospitals decided to go around the traffic by driving in the breakdown lane. Damage to my vehicle was minor, but if it had been any other day I would have been taking my jack and spare out at that moment and been crushed between my car and the ambulance. Everything worked out great. I got a 5-figure settlement from the ambulance company, as they were clearly at fault hitting a car in the breakdown lane. It was a non-emergency transportation of a patient. And when I got home that day, all the appliances were miraculously working again. I met this one guy as a young adult. He was a mutual in my friend group. Thought he was cute. Gave him my social media info and we chatted back and forth for a little bit. I moved away from the area not long after we met. After I moved, he messaged me constantly asking me to come over to his house, attend parties with him, come to his area so he could buy me a drink, so on and so forth. I politely declined every time. This went on for literally a year. Eventually I entered into a committed relationship. Shortly after he asked if I had a boyfriend, I said yes, and he proceeded to send me a bunch of pictures of his wiener. I instantly blocked him. 2 years later, through our mutual friends, I found out that he had been accused of drugging and raping several women. When police came to his house to arrest him, they found a woman in a dog kennel in his living room. Not sure the entire story behind the girl in the kennel, but just thinking about it freaks me out. Edit. Okay, I wasn't expecting this to blow up like it did. I asked one of my friends for more details. Apparently he is also being accused of trafficking women, and the girl in the kennel was one of his victims. He is currently in jail awaiting trial. Praying that justice is served. Reminds me of a guy I recently went on a date with. He seemed antisocial, sociopathic. His house was clinically clean, cold, lifeless and dead feeling. Like nobody actually lived there. He joked that he kept bodies in his freezer. He made excuses for strange marks on the wall, saying he was letting other people stay in his home for weeks for free and he hadn't been there for some time. He said he took off work to thoroughly scrub down his house for my visit, but he missed a few spots which looked like long scuff marks from the bottom of shoes, but at eye level, blaming them on his guests. He pushed me to move in with him when he was showing me his place. Offered me to live there for free. He kept saying, "I'm trying not to be pushy with you about sex," and gestured at the physical distance between us. Strong rapey vibes. Afterwards he sent me CC footage from his home security camera of him walking me to my car and said he misses me and keeps watching that moment back. I blocked him. He contacted me on an unknown number a few weeks later and told me he wasn't giving up. I blocked again. He said he was buying the townhome across the street to have it rented out. I'm starting to wonder if I should have the police check it at some point. My father told me this story. As a young child, he was approached by a man who wanted some change to make a phone call. My father gave the guy some money and the guy said it was too much and that he wanted to give my father some change. My father got in the car with him so that they could go and get some change. While driving, something seemed off, so my father jumped out of the car at a stop sign and ran away. He didn't think about it again until he saw the guy on TV years later. It was John Wayne Gacy. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this.